3 Lives, 3 Worlds, Lotus Steps Book 3. One Step for 1,000 Kalpas. Chapter 6. By Tangqi. Early the next day, the third prince went down to see Lord Tian and brought news about Lord Yihua. Tianjun was happy that his son lived up to his expectations and found out the whereabouts of the prince for him as soon as he returned to the heavenly palace. Tianjun was also angry that the Blue Bird clan did not know good from evil. However, he was angry because he was a king. He was well-versed in world affairs. After weighing the situation, he felt that it was most appropriate to send a capable person to the Blue Bird tribe privately to welcome the prince back. And this capable person was of course none other than his youngest son, who had both eyes and ears. Tianjun then handed over the matter to his youngest son and left him to have breakfast. He asked where he had disappeared recently. Of course, His Highness did not tell the truth, but Tianjun didn't care too much. I just want to find an outlet for my father's love that has nowhere to go. Tianjun's arrangements for the Bluebird clan are very different from His Highness's expectations. After returning to Yuanji Palace, he wanted to take Zidi to Taichan Palace and entrust her to 10,000 reliable Chonglin immortals. But I don't know whether it was because the bone-eating mantra was too powerful or something else, but little Zidi was very attached to him and did not want to stay alone in Taichan Palace, and insisted on going to Chaoyang Valley with him. After thinking carefully and weighing the situation, the Third Highness decided that it was not impossible and ordered the maid to change little Zidi into a boy's outfit. As soon as the palace maid took little Zidi to his bedroom, the giant spirit god at the Nantian gate sent his mount, a small beast, to Yuanji Palace to spread the news that a divine envoy from Gugu Mountain was visiting and was waiting at the Nantian gate to see His Highness. The little mount beast was young and had an uninhibited temper. After conveying these words lively, he came closer to Tianbu, who had received the news, and whispered softly with his mouth closed, "The 2 divine envoys are coming very menacingly. I'm afraid they're here to cause trouble. Sister, how about I go tell them that His Highness hasn't returned to Heavenly Palace yet and coax them away?" By chance, His Highness the Third Prince came out and declined the little mount beast's unreliable kindness, saying that he was free and could go to Nanshanmen to meet the 2 divine envoys. Tianbu watched the Third Highness leave, feeling worried. She speculated that the so-called visit from the goddess Gugu was because the envoys from God Zidi had found out that their lord was being framed by the Third Highness. No, he was with the Third Highness, so they came to Yuanji Palace to ask for someone. Although Tianbu has never met the divine envoys from Gugu Mountain, a month ago when God Zudi first woke up, he sent 2 envoys to the Heavenly Palace to deliver birthday gifts to His Highness the Third Highness. Lord Si Mingxing was fortunate enough to be present at that time, and he heard from Lord Si Mingxing that the 2 divine envoys were cautious in their words and actions, and that they were very difficult to deal with. Tianbu felt that their 3 highnesses were also difficult to deal with. Since both parties were difficult to deal with, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a fight to decide who the god Zuti would follow? It's really scary. Fortunately, the fight that worried Tianbu did not happen. Half an hour later, one of Gugu's envoys followed their highness and steadily entered Yuanji Palace. The divine envoy was a talented man, dressed in blue, with a calm and peaceful expression. He did not seem to be pretending to make peace with their highness, and to sneak up on him while His Highness was not paying attention. As soon as the 2 of them entered the palace gate, little Zut his En ran out holding the corners of her robe. When he saw the little Zudi god, the blue-clothed divine envoy's calm expression finally showed cracks, but he quickly covered it up without losing his composure. Tianbu understood him. If one day His Highness' body and mind suddenly returned to that of a child, she might not be able to accept it so easily. Of course, little Zidi, whose memory had returned to her childhood, did not recognize this divine messenger who would be enlightened by her tens of thousands of years later. She only glanced at the blue-clothed immortal curiously, and then turned her attention to the Third Highness again. She ran over like a deer, raised her head, and asked His Highness when they would leave for Chaoyang Valley. His Highness the Third Prince replied that she was not in a hurry, and introduced the immortal in blue to her, saying that he was the immortal attendant arranged for her. Since he had many things to do after arriving at Chaoyang Valley, he might not be able to always be by her side. With this, he can rest assured that the powerful immortal attendant is always guarding her safety. He also told her that she could call this immortal attendant Xiaoyin. Tianbu then understood that this envoy in blue was 90% the leader of the 4 great envoys of Gugu, Venerable Yinlin. Little Zidi couldn't help but feel comfortable having an extra immortal attendant to look after her. Oh, you're very thoughtful. I am the god of light. I should have an immortal attendant. I am worthy of this honor. She thought deeply for a moment and said. After speaking, he went to hold the hand of His Highness III and praised him sincerely. Brother Lian San is so considerate of me. I like it very much. Tianbu saw Yinlin's gaze resting on the hands held by His Highness the Third Prince and Xiao Zidi, and then he showed a subtle expression of surprise mixed with sadness mixed with helplessness, and as if he was resigned to his fate. Why did Yinlin show such an expression? Tianbu was surprised. When he took a closer look, Yinlin had already restrained his exposed emotions, and his face returned to calmness, like an ancient well without waves. There was a long way to go to Chaoyang Valley. In order to make the journey comfortable for little Zidi, Tian Beauty turned over the cloud boat that he was traveling on. It was the first time for little Zidi to sit on the cloud boat, which felt fresh for a while. But sailing in the sky, seeing nothing but clouds, was boring after all. After a while, she yawned and fell asleep. Tianbu helped little Zidi lie down on the cloud blanket at the bow of the boat. After she fell asleep, he got up and went to the stern of the boat, intending to make a pot of tea for His Highness the Third Highness and Venerable Yinlin, who were playing chess against each other. As he got closer, Tianbu heard Yinlin saying while playing chess, when she was a child, she was quirky, lively, and even naughty. When she became an adult, as her precognitive ability further awakened, her soul gradually the deeper heaven approached, and after that, she gradually became solemn and quiet. And she also had the kind of solemnity and coldness that your later generations heard about. However, whether it was a lively and bright child or a cold and solemn girlhood, she never expressed any concern for anyone. She has expressed dislike or liking for people or anything. She has never said anything about someone whose behavior made her feel like it. Tianbu thought to himself that Venerable Yinlin was feeling aggrieved by the fact that just now little Zhu Ti held His Highness's hand and said, Brother Lian San is thinking about me so much, I like it very much. She pretended that she was just an emotionless tea-making machine and calmly transformed into a tea set to boil water and pour the cup. However, her ears perked up when she heard His Highness the Third Prince reply, It is said that the God of Light has no 7 emotions or 6 desires, but the light gods I saw, whether they were adults or young children, had very clear emotions, anger, sorrow, and joy. Especially the children's light gods, their 7 emotions were particularly vivid, which I found strange. Yinlin's hand holding the chess piece paused. After a moment, he said, The legend is not a lie. The God of Light is indeed ruthless in nature. However, she sacrificed herself for the human race more than 200,000 years ago and was favored by God. After God made her return, she has emotions, so now when she returns to her childhood, you can see her with clear emotions, anger, sorrow, love, evil, and delusion. He paused. This is the first time I have seen her like this. His Highness the Third Prince made a random comment. I don't know what the heartless and desireless god Zhu Ti is like, but the emotional Zhu Ti god is very good to me. Yinlin whispered. I think it's good too. After a while, he added in a haphazard manner, You and her are very destined. If this is God's will. But he did not finish the sentence. The Third Highness played with the chess pieces in his hands and smiled slightly. The God of Light and the God of Water are both gods of nature, and their bond is indeed deeper than the others. God Zhu Ti and I are indeed destined. He looked at Yinlin as if he was confused. Inadvertently, when you say we are destined, do you mean this? Yinlin was startled, then smiled. Yes, of course it means this, otherwise what else could it be? Even though he said this, Luozi took a wrong step. His Highness the Third raised his eyebrows. The tea had been brewed, and Tianbu began to divide the tea between the two gods. She intuitively understood that what Yinlin said about the fate between His Highness and the god of Zhu Ti did not only refer to the natural bond between the god of light and the god of water. But, as Yinlin said, if it wasn't this, what could it be? During the second half of the journey, the two gods stopped talking and just continued to play chess while Tianbu watched from the sidelines. At the bow of the boat, little Zudi was still sleeping soundly. She occasionally glanced at her to make sure that little Zudi had not kicked the quilt. Although Tianbu knew that Xiao Zutian was a great deity who had sacrificed for this world, because of the first time he came into contact with her, she looked like an innocent child and her speech was childish, so Tianbu didn't feel how sacred she was. Zhuang Dian, in fact, he showed more love and pity to her than respect. With the arrival of Venerable Yinlin, who seemed to be holding many secrets, Tianbu suddenly had a real feeling that Xiao Zudi was not an ordinary fairy boy, but a mysterious god of light. She didn't know if His Highness the Third Highness was thinking the same thing in his heart, but after a game of chess ended, when Venerable Yinlin went to the bow of the ship to tuck the little god Zhu Ti into the quilt skillfully, Tianbu found that His Highness' eyes were resting on the little god Zhu Ti. Fallen for a long time. The group arrived at Chaoyang Valley as night fell. The younger brother of the female monarch of the Bluebird clan, Mr. Te, heard that the Third Highness of the Celestial clan was coming and personally led his courtiers out of the palace to welcome him. Mr. Tsanoi was very humble and explained that the queen had gone into seclusion a few days ago and left the court affairs to him for the time being. He also said that before the retreat, the queen was still concerned about the illness of His Highness the Crown Prince and sent an envoy to Dushan to invite the famous Dr. Kongshan Laoqian. He came to treat His Highness the Crown Prince. Kongshan Lao had just arrived at the palace half an hour ago and was diagnosing His Highness's pulse in the Fubo Palace. Mr. Tizzy spoke earnestly, both inside and outside of his words. He expressed the efforts of the Bluebird clan in rescuing the prince, but he never mentioned why they did not send someone to inform them that the Prince of Jichangshan was here. However, it stands to reason that they do not need to inform the Nine Heavens, but they need to inform their master, Bai Qian, about the matter. It's just that they didn't do it either. As for why not to do so, everyone understands it tacitly. After listening to what Mr. Tizzy said, His Highness the Third Prince only nodded and smiled. He praised the Bluebird tribe for their dedication to the prince, and then asked Mr. Te to lead the way and allow him to visit the prince. Not a word else was said. The Bluebird clan is indeed devoted to Lord Yihua. Fubo Hall, the dormitory where Lord Yihua lives, is located next to the palace garden, surrounded by secluded mountains and green water. It is said to be the most pleasant hall in the entire Lutai Palace. In the hall, gold and jade are used as beams, and spar is used as a bed. The bed is surrounded by cloud silk curtains, and jade hooks hold up white satin. A tourmaline bead curtain hangs in front of the bed curtains. The young prince lay behind the shiny and soft bead curtain. The Third Highness raised the fan and opened the bead curtain. Little Zudi looked over curiously and saw the girl squatting in front of the bed and saluting them. Little Zudi's eyes blinked, and she saw the girl's true face. Mr. Tusno introduced from the side and said that this was his and Ms. Jun's sister, Jijiyu, the eldest king of their Bluebird clan. Since the girl has this identity, she should also be a bluebird, but what little Zudi saw in her eyes was that the girl's true appearance was a blue winter flower. This surprised her. There are also many winter flowers in Gugu, white, pink, and even yellow. In summer and autumn, the flowers bloom on the branches, beautiful and fragrant. But she has never seen the blue candong. Little Zudi stared at the girl, one after another, until she noticed her gaze and raised her head in confusion. The woman has almond-shaped eyes and a red mole between her eyebrows, giving her a soft and graceful appearance with a hint of glamour. Little Zudi coughed covertly and looked away, pretending that she had actually been looking at the prince in the spar bed. The young prince rested on a soft brocade pillow, his eyes closed naturally, as if sleeping. At first glance, he didn't look very good, But even if he looked bad, his handsome and eye-catching eyebrows were still eye-catching and handsome. Little Zidi's eyes lit up and she took a step forward unconsciously. Jiu Wangji noticed Xiao Zidi's expression, frowned slightly, moved 2 steps, and blocked the young prince's face. Xiao Zidi was stunned for a moment, but she didn't care. She couldn't admire the prince, so it wasn't impossible to continue admiring the beautiful winter flower that was blocking the prince. The top of her head was hit by a fan. "What are you doing here?" Xiao Zudi covered her head and muttered softly, "It hurts a little." His Highness the Third Prince casually rubbed the top of her hair and calmly ordered the person in front of the bed, Jiu and the maids, "You go down first." Jiu heard this order and did not dare to disobey. He obeyed the order softly and weakly. However, it was obvious that he was reluctant to leave. He turned around and straightened the quilt for the prince, and then put the prince's exposed hand into the quilt, then led the maid back 3 times with 1 step. However, he only retreated to the screen outside the bed curtain, which was closer than Kasano-kun and Sorayama Lao were standing. His Highness the Third Highness did not argue with her. When he came out in front of the bed, he stepped forward and checked Yi Wejun's pulse. Little Zidi also pretended to come up to him. First she glanced at the prince fiercely, then stretched out 2 fingers and placed them between the prince's eyebrows. Soon, she retracted her hand, and when His Highness leaned over to see the injuries on the prince's chest, she covered her mouth and tiptoed close to his ear and whispered in a low voice, "The young prince's mental power is very strong and very stable. I think he will be fine because it is impossible for a dying person to have such mental strength." He then squeezed His Highness's arm comfortingly with an expression of, "You believe me, Brother Lian-san, don't worry." The third prince's eyes moved from her hand holding his arm to her face. "Did you just use magic power?" She glanced at him secretly. Didn't you say it's okay without using heavy magic?" "I didn't use heavy magic." "Law." His Highness the Third nodded. "That's good." Little Zidi glanced at him, then looked at him again. "Then, don't you praise me?" His Highness the Third Highness was curious. "Why do I praise you?" He asked her again. "What do you praise you for?" She pursed her lips and said, "Because I'm so powerful. I can figure out that the little prince is fine just by looking around. I'm very sensible again, so I comfort you not to worry about him." Well, seeing how serious she was, His Highness couldn't help but laugh. "You are very powerful and very sensible." He complimented her carelessly and sat down next to the bed. She didn't notice that His Highness was not distracted at all. After hearing the sincerely expected compliment, she was immediately satisfied. She also found a stool for herself and sat down next to His Highness's legs. Mr. Moses secretly glanced at Little Zidi several times through the bead curtain. The Third Highness did not introduce to them who this handsome and indistinguishable young master was, so he had no clue. There was a silencing spell around the crystal bed. Mr. Tusno saw the 2 talking, but didn't know what they were talking about. But through the bead curtain, he could vaguely see that the Third Highness was friendly and tolerant towards the child. Maybe? Is this young master a cousin of His Highness the Third? Little Zidi didn't know that Mr. Tizzy was observing her. At this time, she was sitting next to His Highness's legs. She felt that just sitting like this was a bit boring, so she put her chin on His Highness's legs, because this angle allowed her to peek at the blue qiandong flower outside the curtain. Flower. But she didn't know how eye-catching her gesture of lying on Lian Song's lap was. Everyone outside the curtain showed surprise when they saw this. Only Yinlin was calm, but his eyes were a little complicated. But Little Zidi didn't notice it at all. She only focused on admiring the winter flowers standing next to the screen. His Highness noticed everyone's surprise, but he didn't care too much, as if there was a raccoon slave lying on his lap. His expression was pleasant and indifferent, and he slowly told Elder Kongshan, "Tell me about Yi Hua's current situation." Kongshan Lao, dressed as a monk, quickly came forward to pay homage. Elder Kongshan faced His Highness the Third Prince and reported the situation of His Highness the Crown Prince in great detail for a quarter of an hour. To put it bluntly, the prince was seriously injured at first, But thanks to Tangqi Gongzi, who rescued him in time and used many natural and earthly treasures to treat his illness, he was able to survive the most dangerous period smoothly. Then the Bluebird clan also took good care of the prince, so the prince's current condition is not bad. As for why people never wake up, it's because the dragon's body is repairing itself through warm sleep. However, the dragon body's self-repair is an extremely slow process, taking as little as 3 to 5 months, and as long as 3 to 5 years. Of course, His Royal Highness cannot be allowed to sleep warmly for 3 to 5 years. Therefore, for now, he plans to give the prince medicine again, interrupt his self-repair, and use external means to nourish his soul. In this way, His Highness will surely wake up soon. After a while of recuperation on the spot, it should be fine. As for how long it will take to recuperate, we still need to wait for His Highness to wake up before we can judge. Because His Highness the Third Highness knew what he was saying, he looked quite calm after listening to Kongshan Lao's report. On the other hand, the Bluebird tribe was very happy, and the most excited one among them was the eldest King Jizuyu. Princess Jiyu's eyes turned red on the spot. If His Highness hadn't been sitting beside the Crown Prince's bed, she would have thrown herself in front of the Crown Prince. Thank God, Your Highness is fine. It will be fine if Your Highness is fine. It will be fine if nothing happens. After saying this, he softened and fainted in the arms of the maid. The scene was chaotic for a while. Mr. Tuzi asked his maid to help the eldest Wang Ji to rest, while he explained to His Highness the Third Prince with shame, "Sister, she has been waiting in front of the Crown Prince's bed for a long time and has not had a good night's sleep for several days. I guess she heard that His Highness the Crown Prince is fine, so she tensed up. My spirit finally relaxed and I fainted. Please don't take it personally, Your Highness." Naturally, His Highness the Third Prince cannot be offended. After the silence in front of the prince's bed returned, His Highness the Third Highness read the prince's medical records recorded by the Bluebird tribe in the past few days. When Sue's time arrived, Mr. Tuzi led the way to the dormitory that the Bluebird tribe had arranged for them and their party. Lord Tuzi was diligent and sent several beautiful maids to serve him. But His Highness the Third Highness was picky, and when Tianbu accompanied him, he always only allowed Tianbu to serve him. When Tianbu made the bed, His Highness the Third Prince gave her some instructions, asking her to light some calming benzoin later, saying that little Zudi might not be able to sleep well because she changed the bed, and she did not sleep very peacefully last night. Tianbu takes orders. The little goddess Zudi was taking a bath in the clean room at this time, and Yin Lin was looking after her outside the door. Tianbu lit the incense and came outside, but stopped talking. His Highness the Third, who was sitting at the desk writing a letter, raised his head and glanced at her. "Want to talk about the Bluebird tribe?" Tianbu really wanted to talk to His Highness the Third Highness about the Bluebird clan. Hearing this, he showed a worried expression. "I think this Bluebird clan is too dishonest." His Highness the Third Prince smiled. "Oh." Tianbu saw that he wanted to let him continue, so he poured him a cup of tea and said after considering, "If it is according to what Mr. Tui said, they really respect my celestial clan and have no other intention, then when they saw Your Highness, they should have apologized for hiding His Highness the Crown Prince. But they only pretended to be the benefactors of our heavenly clan, and even invited Elder Kongshan here, implying that His Highness the Crown Prince needed to be recuperated here." That's great. The eldest Wang Ji looked like she was obsessed with His Highness the Crown Prince. Lord Tuzi, who was the one who made the decision, actually didn't stop her. There was a strong intention in her words to facilitate this beautiful thing. Tianbu paused. Before this, His Highness also said that the Bluebird tribe does not necessarily want to extort favors in exchange for benefits. Seeing their behavior, this servant is very worried. She frowned and said, "If it is not in exchange for benefits, could it be that they want to exchange for the Crown Prince? Your Highness's marriage." His Highness did not stop writing, and his reply to her was ambiguous. "It is possible, but it may not be the case." However, Tianbu already felt that this was probably the case and couldn't help but sneer. "If you have such ambitions, then you should ask Your Highness." They can't hold their breath. Do they still want to wait for us to speak first? His Highness the Third Prince finished writing on one piece of paper and took out another one and spread it out. Chaoyang Valley has beautiful scenery. Since they sincerely invite us to stay for a while, it would be good to stay for a while and relax here. He said nonchalantly, it's also a way. Let's see if they can really keep their composure. Tianbu thought for a moment. That's true. Your Highness has nothing to do anyway. We are not in a hurry. Whoever speaks first will be passive about this kind of thing. When she said this, she suddenly remembered a verse, but God Zuti, isn't he still waiting for the emperor and his old man to come out of seclusion? What if? Although she only said half of what she said, His Highness the Third Highness had already heard what she meant. Don't worry, they won't be able to delay it for that long. Wanner is not that calm-tempered. Tianbu was stunned. Wan? No one had mentioned this name for many years. When he suddenly heard it, Tianbu couldn't help but be in a daze. Your Highness, is he talking about Wan? But what is this? What does this have to do with Wan? The wolf's hair was dipped in ink, and the third prince lowered his head and wrote on the letter paper. Didn't I mention it to you? Wanna returned to the Blue Bird tribe when she left. The previous king of the Blue Bird tribe gave her a new name, Mi Leisure. Tianbu's pupils suddenly shrank and he murmured, Mi Xia, the female queen of the Blue Bird clan. She couldn't believe it. Your Highness is saying that Wanner back then is actually the female queen of the Blue Bird clan today, Mi Xian? His Highness the Third Prince hummed, his eyes focused on the letter, and he said nothing more. Tianbu didn't ask any more questions, but he couldn't stop the roar in his heart. Wanner is an old friend. The Yuanji palace of the Third Prince, Tianjun, had many passers-by, and Wanner was the only one who entered the Yuanji palace not because he had any romantic feelings for the Third Prince. Was that 12,000 years ago or 13,000 years ago? Tianbu couldn't remember clearly, but it must have been that time. One spring, His Highness the Third Prince suddenly disappeared for 2 months. The Third Highness is an immortal and is used to being unruly. Tianbu is also used to disappearing from time to time, but it is not very common for the Third Highness to leave Juchangshan for a month or two and not take her with him to serve him. Tianbuho was gradually getting a little anxious in Yuanji Palace. He was about to discuss with the 24 civil and military attendants about sending people to leave the palace to look for him. That evening, His Highness the Third Prince came back and brought back a delicate and thin girl. That girl is Wanner. Before His Highness disappeared, he was accompanied by a beautiful woman. The beauty is the second daughter of Lord Lana. She is arrogant but infatuated. His Highness disappeared for 2 months, so she waited in Yuanji Palace for 2 months. After finally returning to His Highness, I saw that he had brought back a little beauty. How could the arrogant goddess of Lanha endure it? She immediately became furious and threatened to return to Lanha immediately. At the gate of the palace, facing the goddess Lanha who lost her temper and threatened to return to her hometown, His Highness the Third Highness was extremely calm and did not say a word. He only led Wan Er to take a few steps to the side door to make way for the goddess Lanha. Its meaning is self-explanatory. The beauty looked at him in disbelief and burst into tears instantly. Your Highness, is there a new man, and you don't want me anymore? Are you going to drive me away? The Third Highness is romantic, and the goddesses take the initiative to ask to enter Yuanji Palace because they love him. He usually will not refuse. This is a common knowledge. However, the Third Highness is romantic, and Yuanji Palace never admits 2 beauties at the same time. This is also something that everyone knows. Therefore, when His Highness the Third Highness made way for Goddess Lanha, and when she asked, "Does your Highness not want me now that he has a new man?" he raised his hand and rubbed his forehead. The proud goddess suddenly sobered up and understood. She must have misunderstood his relationship with the girl, and when she was about to make amends, she heard His Highness the Third Prince say to her calmly, tiredly, but gently, "Wanner is not a newcomer. However, since you don't like her, then it would be unpleasant to stay in Tiangong and meet her sooner or later, so it would be better to go back to Lanha." The goddess Lana was sent away from Yuanji Palace in this way. On the morning when the goddess Lanha left the palace, Tianbu served His Highness the Third Highness and Wanner to have breakfast in the front courtyard. Wanner watched the goddess Lana leave. She was silent for a long time, and her eyes slowly became foggy. He looks thin and can be bullied, and with that expression, he looks even more pitiful. She was like a piece of glass that was not pure enough. She could not be said to be very beautiful, but she was undoubtedly very fragile. But she looked so fragile, but she still had the courage to say bold words. When the Third Highness finished his meal and was about to get up to leave, Wanyu raised his hand to stop the Third Highness. With a pair of moist eyes, he asked the Third Highness a question. Although your Highness has taken me in now, one day he will do the same. Drive me away? His Highness frowned and asked her, why do you think so? Seeing her trembling eyelashes and lowering her head without saying a word, His Highness replied to her and said no. Regarding the origin of Wanner, His Highness has never mentioned it. But if a young girl lives in Yuanji Palace and is not His Highness's female companion, then she must have a name. Yuanji Palace announced that Wanner was the daughter of an old friend of the Third Highness. Before his death, the old friend entrusted his underage daughter to the care of the Third Highness, hoping that he could protect her until she reached adulthood. Tianbu couldn't tell whether this was the case, but she felt that it should be credible. In Tianbu's recollection, His Highness the Third Highness was really good to Wanner. An orphan girl who lives in Yuanji Palace, her food and daily life are in accordance with the standards of the princesses of heaven. She has what the princesses have. Not only that, His Highness the Third Highness also personally acted as guarantee and sent her to the disciples of true Lord Beidou, so that she could become his disciple and become his disciple. And when she came of age more than 700 years later, His Highness the Third Prince held a grand coming-of-age ceremony for her. Tianbu feels that Wanner is lucky. Although he lost his father at a young age, he was lucky enough to meet His Highness the Third and receive such comprehensive and appropriate protection. For more than 700 years, Wanner has been well-behaved and well-behaved in the Tiangong. She has not caused much trouble to His Highness, and Tianbu also likes her. She originally thought that Wanner would be more knowledgeable and obedient as an adult, and would follow the path laid out for her by His Highness the Third Highness. After becoming a disciple of Lord Beidou, she would be granted the title of Immortal Mountain and truly stand on her own in the Eight Wastes. Unexpectedly, Wanner suddenly disappeared shortly after becoming an adult. The entire Yuanji Palace was worried, and His Highness went out in person to look for her for a long time. Tianbu remembered that it was also a dusk, very similar to the dusk that His Highness the Third Highness brought back to Wanner more than 700 years ago. His Highness the Third Prince returned to the palace, and when faced with her anxious inquiries, he said that he had found Wanner and that she had left voluntarily and would not come back again. Tianbu had many questions, such as where he found Zhuani, how is she now, and why she refused to come back, but in the end he only had one question. Everyone in the palace treated her very well. Why did she want to leave? His Highness the Third Highness did not answer her question and only said, this is her choice. Now that she has reached adulthood, she has the right to make her own choice. But now that she has made such a choice, she will no longer be Yuanji from now on. People from the palace. This was the last time His Highness talked about Wanner with her. After more than 10,000 years, no one in the 9 heavens mentioned this name again. How could we have imagined that the former Wani would now become the mistress of the Blue Bird clan? So when she left the heavenly palace, she returned to the Blue Bird clan? She turns out to be the queen of the Blue Bird tribe? But if she's the legitimate princess of the Blue Bird clan, why would His Highness take her back to Yuanji Palace to take care of her as an orphan? And, since the female monarch of the Blue Bird tribe is Wani, is the current attitude of the Blue Bird tribe the same as Wani? What on earth does she want to do? Tianbu had 100,000 reasons in his mind, and he was thinking hard when he was interrupted by His Highness the Third. His Highness the Third Prince had already written the letter, handed her 2 pieces of letter paper, and ordered, seal it and give it to Wei Jia. Tianbu quickly calmed down, took the letter, scanned it lightly, and with a look of surprise, he did not want to think about Wanyu anymore, and said in surprise, Your Highness suspects that the person Kong Lao said saved the prince in time and used many natural materials and earthly treasures to help him survive the dangerous period is not the bamboo language queen. His Highness the Third Prince took another piece of paper and wrote something on it and said as he was writing, Lao Kashan is aloof. He is very good at diagnosing the pulse and can identify the patient's medical history by diagnosing the pulse, so he never looks at the patient's medical record. According to what Lao Kongshan reported, Yi Hua was seriously injured at the beginning, but he used many rare materials and treasures to turn the situation around. Lao Kongshan has been practicing medicine for tens of thousands of years. Apart from anything else, he is not wrong in diagnosing the pulse. I believe this, he said. He dipped his pen in ink and wrote a new line on the paper, but what's interesting is that although the medical records of the Bluebird tribe also recorded that Yi Hua's condition was not very good in the early days, according to that medical record, Yi Hua was not in good condition at that time. But his condition is by no means as dangerous as what Mr. Kongshan said. Tianbu immediately understood. Since the Bluebird clan wants to show their kindness to our celestial clan, if they really rescued the prince from danger, it is naturally impossible not to record this episode in the medical record. So it is very possible Princess Juyu actually met and rescued His Highness the Crown Prince when his condition had stabilized. His Highness the Third Prince hummed, so let Wei Jia go check it out first. The pen wandered on the paper, and his tone was light and leisurely. There are not many immortals in Qingqiu who can bring out many treasures to save Yi Hua. There are just a few prominent families under the control of the Bai family. He stopped writing, glanced at the letter, and checked what he had just finished writing. It is interesting to save Yi Hua, but hide his merit and fame. I also want to know which clan of immortals this is and why it is like this. Although His Highness was leisurely, as if the matter was not urgent and he could check it at any time, Tianbu was so curious that he could not restrain himself. I will pass the letter to Wei Jia right now. However, His Highness the Third Highness stopped him. His Highness the Third Prince handed her the paper he had just checked and ordered, "Put this away and memorize it." Tianbu took the paper and looked down. Different from the cursive letter just now, this is a regular script, elegant and powerful, with excellent bones. Every word is like a beauty left in the world, but the content. Tianbu recited silently. The taste is light, and I like to eat simmered things, especially fresh fish, clams, etc. But I don't eat eels, turtles, crabs, beef, sheep, and other strong-flavored things. I don't care about fruits and vegetables. I don't eat them. Fried food, love sweet cakes. Tianbu looked at His Highness the Third Highness uncertainly. This seems to be a taboo? Your Highness, when did you start being picky about food? His Highness the Third stood up and was about to put the pen into the wash basin. It's not me, it's the likes and dislikes of God Zuti. Just as the tip of the pen was about to touch the water, he said again, "Oh, I forgot something." Tianbu knew what he meant. Spreading the paper on the table, he pressed the edge of the paper and added another word. My favorite is steamed anchovies. You can do it often. There is no need to remove the scales of the anchovies. Tianbu was silent for a moment as he watched His Highness the Third Prince write these few strokes in small regular script that made everyone proud. This was not something she should ask, but seeing that His Highness was in a good mood, she couldn't help but ask, "Don't His Highness hate picky eaters the most?" The Third Highness put down his pen and looked up at her after hearing this. "Do I have it?" Tianbu couldn't help but nodded. "Yes, it happened 20 years ago." She said softly, "Goddess Ingchen, the daughter of the mountain god of Sanwei Mountain, admires you and is a guest in Yuanji Palace. The goddess is picky about food, and the servants are not after taking good care of her. The goddess went to you to complain, but the next day you sent someone to send the goddess back to Sanwei Mountain. From then on, picky eating has been listed as one of the taboos in our Yuanji Palace," Tianbu said. As he spoke, he became suspicious. "Your Highness, you won't forget this, right?" Then he was confused. Then in the future, our Yuanji Palace can't help but be picky about food. His Highness was silent for a moment, and then answered her in a calm and matter-of-fact tone. "Adult gods shouldn't be picky eaters. But isn't it normal for children to be picky eaters? After thinking about it, he added, that's not the case either. If you eat whatever you don't like, you will be happy when you eat the food you like, and you will be angry when you eat the food you hate. Isn't it natural and cute for children to do this? While Tianbu found it difficult to answer this question, he also felt that Goddess Ancient was really wronged. Little Zudi was lying on the jade bed with her hands folded. She heard a distant bird song outside the hall and turned over. She slept too much on the cloud boat during the day, and benzoin was of no use to her, so she couldn't sleep again tonight. She adjusted her sleeping position, lying on her side with her hands beside her face, facing the plain gauze folding screen not far from the bed. A folding screen divided the inner room into two sections, and Lian Song slept on the low couch on the other side of the folding screen. Next to the big bed where little Zudi was lying, Tianbu was lying on the floor made of brocade quilts. After working hard all day, Tianbu seemed to have fallen asleep. Across the plain gauze screen, one can see Lian Song lying in plain clothes, with the cloud quilt draped around his waist, and he seems to be asleep. Everyone has gone to bed so early. Little Zudi sighed. Unable to sleep, she began to think wildly. The first thing I thought about was Lian Song. She has stayed in Gugu since she was born and has not been out much. Dad Tangqi said that their behavior of staying in Gugu without going out is called seclusion, and the world outside Gugu is called outside the world, and those gods, demons, ghosts, and so on in outside the world, they can be collectively referred to as people outside the world. Outsiders are extremely dangerous and treacherous, while outsiders are very cunning, especially the dignitaries of all ethnic groups, who are the best among the cunning ones. Little Zudi had not seen much of the outside world, and did not know a few outside-the-world people. She had always believed in what Tangqi said. But now she met Lian Song. This Tianjuan's youngest son was undoubtedly a very noble person among the gods, but he treated her so well, was considerate, and took good care of her. She dared to say that even Tangqi's father was not as safe as Lian Song when it came to taking care of her. In addition, he was so good-looking, the best-looking among the male gods she had ever seen. She couldn't be more satisfied with him, and she became a little suspicious of what Father Tangqi said. While she was looking at Lian Song behind the folded screen, she was thinking about all these things. She was so absorbed in thinking that she became less and less sleepy. The young man on the short couch who had his eyes closed and seemed to be asleep suddenly spoke. "Why are you still not sleeping?" He opened his eyes and turned sideways. "Maybe we can talk for a while? Maybe you want to talk when you are tired." "Asleep." Little Zudi sat up in excitement. Aren't you asleep?" In fact, Lian Song had not fallen asleep, he just closed his eyes and rested his mind. At first, he heard Xiao Zudi turning over quietly on the bed. He turned over for a while, maybe because he was afraid of affecting him and Tianbu, so he stopped turning over and stared at Jia. Looking at the screen, the gaze fell on him through the folding screen. It was so intense that it was hard to ignore. She also struggled a bit last night, but she fell asleep after fussing for a while, but tonight she seemed to be 100 times more energetic than last night. Lian Song secretly noted that benzoin had no effect on little Zudi and might even have the opposite effect. He thought for a moment and figured out how to help her fall asleep. Then he opened his eyes to break the silence and spoke to her. Xiao Zudi was obviously very moved by his proposal to talk together, but she was also quite sensible, so she was a little hesitant. "Brother Kulan-san, aren't you sleepy?" he asked quietly. "Sister Tianbu seems to be very tired and wants to sleep. Will we disturb her?" "I'm not sleepy, I can chat with you." Lian Song answered her and used a silencing technique to cover the two of them, saying, "This way, Tianbu won't be disturbed." Little Zudi immediately became happy and lay down a little excitedly, returning to her previous position of lying on her side. "Well, let's talk," she asked Lian Song expectantly. "Then what should we talk about?" Lian Song let her go. "Anything is fine." Little Zudi lay on her back and looked at the tent roof, murmuring, "Is anything okay?" She was quiet for a while, then turned around. "Then I want to ask you a question. The expression on her face was very serious, with a hint of a little confused. "Brother Lian San, do you want me to choose to be a girl instead of a boy in the future?" Lian Song was stunned. After a while, he asked her, "Why do you ask that?" Little Zudi muttered, "Because the clothes and accessories you prepared for me are all for girls, such as skirts, wagging, and so on." The Song dynasty heard about the goddess Zhu Ti for the first time in legends, and she appeared as a goddess of mercy. Theoretically, Little Zudi is indeed asexual and can be a boy or a girl in the future. However, it is known that God Zudi chose to become a goddess when she came of age. Lian Song naturally bent over her as a little girl at this time and prepared all the clothes for her. "It's a nice little skirt." Hearing her muttering and complaining, he didn't think it was his fault. He just asked her, "Don't you dress like this in Gugu?" Little Zudi nodded. "I wear them too," and shook her head, "but I don't always wear skirts." She thought about it. "Sometimes I wear skirts, sometimes I wear robes, but more often than not I wear robes." After finishing speaking, she suddenly turned over and sat up, hugging the quilt, and said seriously, "When I reach adulthood at 40,000 years old, I can choose my gender. I want to be a male god by then." Lian Song was stunned again. Little Zudi's declaration was shocking. Surprised, Lian Song immediately thought of more than 300,000 years ago. Did Little Zudi also always dreamed of becoming a male god when she was a child? If so, why did she choose to be a goddess in the end? Is there any compelling reason or difficulty? Through the plain veil, Lian Song looked at Little Zudi, who was sitting cross-legged, as if she didn't understand why he was surprised. His voice couldn't help but become softer. "Why do you want to be a male god?" he asked her. Little Zudi pulled the quilt closer to her arms. Her movements were very gentle, as if she was a little shy, and her voice became softer. "Because I also want to be like Brother Lian San, with a strong body and superb skills. In this way, I can better fulfill the promise I made to the flowers and trees when I was born." Lian Song was very interested in the promise in her mouth. "What did you do when you were just born? Why do you owe someone a promise?" Hearing Lian Song's words, Little Zudi buried her entire face in the quilt. She buried her face for a while before lifting it up again. "It's embarrassing. Don't laugh at me if I say it," she asked Lian Song. Lian Song pretended to be serious and nodded. "Well, I'm not laughing at you." She took a deep breath. "When I was first born, although I didn't know much about anything, I was very intelligent and sensed the revelation of heaven. I knew that I had the responsibility to protect this world, but I didn't know that I was just born. I'm not qualified to take on that responsibility. Also, I saw that Gugu's flowers and trees were beautiful, and I liked them, so I spoke big words to them." She stopped here. Lian Song urged her, "What big talk?" She held her breath. "I told them that I was their protector. If they prayed for anything, they just had to tell me and I would satisfy them." Lian Song smiled and said, "Were you 1 year old at that time?" She said with a dull face, "I am not a year old, just 1 day old, and I just learned how to transform myself into the light. Apart from this ability, I don't have any other abilities." Lian Song disagreed. "No, he still has the ability to tell lies." Little Zudi slowly lifted up the brocade pillow at hand, feeling in disbelief. "Didn't you promise not to laugh at me?" She protested and threw the brocade pillow over vigorously. The brocade pillow hit the plain screen and rolled down. Lian Song suppressed his laughter and apologized quickly. "I'm sorry." Tianbu turned over. Xiao Zudi originally wanted to be angry, but when she heard the sound of Tianbu, she even forgot to be angry. But then she remembered that Lian Song had cast a mute spell. Although the sound of the pillow hitting the screen might disturb Tianbu, she couldn't hear what they were talking about. She could be angry. But at the same time, she also realized that Lian Song apologized very happily, and it was not easy for her to continue to be angry, so she pouted and tried to make up for herself. "I was too young and too naive at that time." She is very young now, very innocent, and the way she complains seriously is very cute and actually a bit funny. But Lian Song respected her very much and did not interrupt her, letting her continue to make amends. because I was very young and very simple. When I made them the promise, I thought that the flowers and trees were just praying to the god of light. She raised her hand and gestured. She gestured. For example, if plants that love light grow in a shady place and need light or something, then of course I can satisfy them immediately, even though I am not yet a year old. She said dully, but there are actually transformations. When the flowers and trees in the world were in danger, they also prayed to me, but I couldn't help them. It was hard to understand. Also, they actually came to me to pray when they were in emotional trouble. She held her head, making a childish and dizzy expression. I don't even understand. Lian Song concluded for her, if you become a divine king, you will be very powerful. When the flowers and trees pray to you when they are in danger, you can also protect them. Is that what you think? He praised her logic. This originally, it was true, but goddesses can also have vast magical powers and boundless magic power. For example, he mentioned a goddess who was one of the best in the era more than 300,000 years ago. In terms of force value, in this world, she can beat Nuwa. I'm afraid there aren't many of them, right? He asked her, why don't you want to be a powerful goddess like Nuwa? Xiao Zudi showed an expression of admiration. Empress Nuwa is very powerful. I admire her very much. She lowered her eyelashes, a little frustrated, but I am different. If I want to be powerful and be able to move mountains and seas, you can't be a goddess. These words sounded a bit strange at first, and even His Highness, who was as smart as the third prince, could not fully understand it for a moment. He paused and said, what do you mean? Little Zudi looked at him. The immortal body of the god of light is very special. Now, because I am not yet an adult and my body is limited, I can only practice healing spells, such as those with strong aggression. I'm not very good at learning. If I choose to become a male god when I become an adult, this body will be rebuilt and I will be able to practice very powerful attack techniques. Correspondingly, I will no longer be able to practice powerful healing spells. But if I choose to be a girl, it will be just the opposite. I can practice the most powerful healing spells, but I cannot practice powerful attack spells. This is where you can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah, she thought about it, sighed, and summed up her physical condition. I'm so miserable. His Highness the Third Highness did not feel that she was miserable, and the keen His Highness the Third Highness also gave her a summary of the statement. It turns out that the adult god Zuti is good at healing spells and does not know how to use powerful attack spells. The Third Highness also immediately recalled the Donghua Emperor's notes about the Supreme Good Wuji Bao that Su Ji had shared with them. According to the notes, Venerable Sijia once lamented that the infinite Bao of the ancestors was worthy of being the king of bows, but he only hoped that it would never appear in the world. At that time, when Su Ji talked about this section, they all still wondered why Sijia sighed like this. Now that I think about it, maybe the spells carried by the Supreme Good Infinite Bao are top-notch healing spells, and the occasion when those healing spells need to be used must be when the catastrophe of Bahuang is coming. So Sijia, only then would I say I hope it will never appear. Yi Hua once said that God Zuti is a very mysterious goddess, which is indeed true. In this lying talk tonight, he really gained a lot of new knowledge. When he used it to write exam questions for the newly ascended immortals, he should be able to make everyone fail again. His Highness the Third Highness thought slightly in trance. End of Chapter 6, Book 3.